Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. I am your running host, Dean Thompson. Today, we're going to share a story about how God can use people we don't even know to impact us in unimaginable ways. You do not want to miss this story. And then I'm going to talk about how my cat, yes, my cat, changes my perspective on running and my time with God. And joining me to discuss those things and a whole lot more is Run for God founder Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean. How's your week been?
It's been good. What about you?
It's been okay.
Yeah?
We'll talk about it in a second.
So
how was it with Gay last week?
It was a gay story. Just
so as of this point, I haven't heard it yet because it hasn't released till next week. But Gay's always fun to sit and talk about.
She is.
She's never at a loss for words.
No, and her faithfulness through everything she's been through has been just so inspiring.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's a number of folks who really enjoyed hearing it.
I think that podcast gave her a shot in the arm. She texted me the other night talking about how she's going back through the 5K again, and
good.
Yeah,
good,
she's a trooper for sure. I think she's a keeper.
I think so.
Yeah, we'll keep her around.
Well, and it's not slowing down any either. This week, there's another really inspiring story this week. So, stay tuned.
So, let's talk about this week's sponsor at Run for God. We like to do business with locally owned businesses when it's practical. And One Source Business Products is one of those. They are Dalton's only locally owned office supply company. If you're looking for office supplies, furniture, printing, janitorial, custom forms, or stamps, they have you covered. And the prices are right. That's why they compare and you save. Give them a call at 706-516-3900. Or you don't have to be in Dalton to buy from them. You can buy online at onesourcebp.com. That's ONESOURCE BP. That's onesourcebusinessproducts.com. So yeah, Barry and all the crew down there at One Source, they're great people. I go to church with them. Just a great group of godly people.
That's
so
awesome.
Use them if you can.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. That's in my room. You probably weren't even thinking about it when you came in, but I want to talk about this out loud. Because one, I want to ridicule myself a little bit, but I also want to talk about this out loud because this is common.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to learn something from this. So I've been back on running. You know, I took a couple years off. I was doing the walking program, loved that. And so this year I decided I was going to get back to running and do a marathon this fall. And so went through the 5K challenge. I'm doing the same challenge as everybody else. Did the 5K challenge just fine. Had a decent 5K time for me. Got into the 10K. Started doing the workouts that we prescribe. The workouts were going great. I've kind of joined up with you at the track a few times just to hold me accountable. You know, we need that. You know, especially on those tempo runs and those interval workouts. It's good to have somebody there, and you've been great about that. And I have hit everything almost dead on up until
Tuesday.
Tuesday we get to the track, and there was a series of circumstances that I should have made better preparations before we started. I didn't. Anyway, we're about 2 miles into the run, about 2 miles into the run, and I just stopped.
Yeah.
Dead in my tracks. And I've told you, I feel like my legs are there, but my mind is not keeping up with my legs yet. And this goes to prove that this is a mind game, because my legs were fine.
Yeah.
My legs were fine. My brain was not there, and I stopped, and basically I quit the workout. I mean, I'll just say it. I quit the workout. And you even said it. You're going to hate yourself tomorrow for this. And you were right. You know, Dean's not one to mix words. And he will bust your chops when your chops need busting, which is why I have him around. That's why I go run with him. But what I realized is that I was dreading that workout from the moment I got up that morning. All day. And when I got there and we started to run and it started to get hard, I'm convinced that my mind started affecting me physiologically.
Yep.
My heart rate started to increase. My breathing increased higher than it normally is. And I felt like I couldn't do it. Now, I know I could have done it. No doubt I could have done it. So I failed at that workout. But guess what? It didn't ruin my training.
That's right.
And it's so tempting at that moment to throw in the towel for all the training. I've done this enough to know, that may affect my race next weekend by a second or two at the most. The number one thing that I want everybody to take from this is it didn't ruin my training, and I went back out the next day and ran. And I probably ran a little bit too fast the next day trying to make up for something, which you can't make up. You can't chase workouts.
Yeah,
don't
true.
even try. But the point is, don't give up. I know this, and Dean, you know this too. You've had workouts where you feel like the whole world's closing in. It's so easy to throw in the towel at that point. And so all I'm saying by saying this, learn from my failure. I failed on Tuesday. I got back out. We're going to the track after this podcast, and you're going to make me do this interval workout that's coming up. Don't allow the devil to creep in and say, you can't do this. You're not good enough. Look, you failed. This goes to so many other areas of our life. Your Bible in a year. You miss a day. Oh, well.
Yep.
Don't go back and try to chase it. Just start back that next day. And because consistency over time is the secret to big gains.
Yep.
It's not hitting every single workout perfectly. That's great if that can happen. But by far, the secret is that you get out there the next day and you do it again.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
That.
I was kicking myself pretty hard the next day. You're right. Yeah. I was kicking myself 10 minutes later.
I knew you would be.
I was telling the track. I was complaining to poor Karen sitting on the stairs. I went down and sat beside her. I said, I just completely crumbled on that workout. And she was looking at me like, why are you telling me all this?
Well, what I think is important for people to understand is that in your mind, you couldn't do it in that moment, right?
In the moment, yes.
You couldn't do it. And so for so many people out there who are convinced in the moment you can't do it, it's okay. It's okay if you succumb to that occasionally, but you need to do what you did. Afterwards, you need to look back at that and go, I could have done that if I was stronger mentally. It's not that I couldn't do it physically. I just got to be stronger mentally, because so many people are convinced because they felt so bad that I can't do it physically.
Well, and the honesty is the most important part, because even you after it was welcome to the South. We're 30 degrees one day and we were pushing 80 degrees that day. And you said, it's kind of thick out here. That could have been some of your problem. And I wouldn't even let you do that. I said, no, that was not my problem, Dean. Yeah. My problem was the 6 inches between my ears.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good point, is you got to be honest with yourself.
Yep.
And if something deep down inside of you says, if you're upset with yourself the next day, that tells you all you need to know.
It does. Yep.
It was you, not your legs.
That's right. Well, along those same lines, this Facebook post from this past week, Anne Marie says, didn't want to move today. Just stay in bed under the covers, nice, warm, and cozy, listening to Dean read the Bible in a year and word for the day. After reading some inspirational posts, I knew I needed to get this body up and out training for my first 5K ever at 71 years old with COPD and asthma.
What's your excuse?
Yeah. Week 5 training. So, you all know what happens next. Yes, God gave me the determination and strength and got me out that door for the workout periods. I actually ran for a minute and a half. What an awesome God we have. For His glory and only His, I am able to achieve this goal. My plan initially was to walk this challenge knowing my lung disease, but in training, I believe through Him, all is possible, and I will be a runner. Praise be to Him. Isn't that awesome?
Awesome. 71 years old, asthma, COPD.
Yep.
Started thinking she was going to walk and is now determined to run.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in this
That
post
is awesome.
that is so great. And the idea that if you think that there are people out there that aren't thinking that same thing that you're thinking about, sure is comfortable here where I am. Everybody does it. Mm-hmm. I do it. Mm-hmm. You know, I've run every day except one for the last almost 12 years. And I still, to this day, there's days it's like, I just don't want to go out and run today. Mm-hmm. And you just got to just do it.
Yeah.
And it's funny how God will just show up. He'll show up when you need Him the most. And, gosh, 71 years old, COPD and asthma. And she's going to run her first 5K.
Now, I just know that there's going to be a devotion submitted from Anne Marie after that first 5K. Because there's more to that story than just what she put here.
100%.
No question.
For sure. Well, last week's trivia question was interesting. It was this. What is the world record for walking a 5K? I think you knew this. Mm-hmm. We had talked about it before. But the world record for walking a 5K is from Hatem Gula from Tunisia, 18 minutes and 5 seconds. That is a 5 minutes and 50 seconds per mile pace. That's walking.
That's a minute and 50 seconds than I've ever ran a 5K.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah.
Man. And the second best outdoor time is 18:17, so it's 12 seconds slower. But, of course, indoors there were 6 people in between those two times. What I think happens is I don't think they do the outdoor 5K very often. Most of the time when they do 5K, it's an indoor 5K. Outdoors, they typically go longer. Mm-hmm. In the Olympics, there's only 2 walking events. You have the 20K and the 50K. So the walking events are typically much longer than that. And I think that's why there's that big gap there. The female record is 20:01 from Eleonora Giorgi from Italy. That's a 6:28 per mile pace.
Wow.
Just amazing. And of course, I looked at the top 25, both male and female, and there are no Americans on either side in the top 25. I guess walking is just competitive walking is not a really popular thing in the United States, which is interesting because walking in general is very popular in the United States, but it's not a popular sport. So very interesting. And I kind of find it hard to watch competitive walking. I want to get up. I want to try to help them along. You know what I mean? It's so hard to keep under control. And it's why that, the way that it works, you can tell it's hard for them as well. So this is what Olympics.com says. Race walking is believed to have originated in the Victorian era, 1837 to 1901, when noblemen used to bet on their footmen who walked alongside their employers' horse-driven coaches for a winner. It came to be known as pedestrianism and made its way to the United States in the late 19th century. It caught on as a spectacle sport, with participants walking nearly 1,000 kilometers in 6 days inside packed indoor arenas. It continued to fuel betting, with wagers being placed on even which participant would drop out first. It was a real spectacle, Matthew Algeo, author of the book Pedestrianism, when watching people walk was America's favorite spectator sport, told National Public Radio. There were brass bands playing songs. There were vendors selling pickled eggs and roasted chestnuts. It was a place to be seen. From a pastime, the activity was eventually formalized in England. Basic rules were established, and race walking was soon recognized as a sport for professionals. And those rules are this. The rules are that you have to have one foot on the ground at all times as being seen by the naked eye. So you have to be able to tell by your eye. Apparently, the eye is not fast enough. It is possible to have both feet on the ground and not be able to tell. Also, your leg has to be straight when it's planted, and it has to be straight when you're in the back of so your leg has to stay straight the whole time, which is why people look funny when they're doing it.
When I was walking, and I never got that second rule. I mean, I guess I don't understand why that second rule is there, because what I found when I was walking a lot, I mean, I got pretty fast walking.
Yeah.
I didn't get near this fast, but what I found was that I could get a lot faster when I bent both knees.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why they say that disqualifies you.
Yeah.
Because to me, the 1 foot on the ground is the definition of walking.
Yeah.
I mean, just in general, that's the definition of walking. But yeah, I mean, this is, it feels like there's a big opportunity here.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Because we have never added a walking category to any of our races. Maybe that's something to think about long term down the road. I don't know how you police that, because obviously, not saying that it's going to be a chronic problem of cheating, but based on 1 foot on the ground, it's hard to cheat running because it's go fast. But with walking, you got to have eyes out there to make sure that nobody's, because honestly, it does. It when I was walking, it feels good to take running breaks.
Yeah.
So,
and in these like places like the Olympics and championship race walking, you have people along the course, and even the professionals, the people who are really good at it, there's almost always, you look at those results and there's almost always folks that get disqualified.
Yeah.
Because they have a hard time following the rule, because it's just really,
it's very uncomfortable.
Hard to do.
Yeah. It is.
And so what they do is, the way that it works is they have a yellow paddle. These officials have yellow paddles. And so if you're coming by and they saw that you broke the rules, they hold the yellow paddle out in front of you so that you know that you did it. If you get 3 yellow paddles, then it's the red paddle and you're disqualified from the race. So that's the way that works, which is, I thought was interesting, because you would think professionals wouldn't have a problem following rules, but it's just that much of you're that close to the edge.
Yeah, and I would, if I had to guess, I wouldn't think they're breaking the rules intentionally.
No,
because it's in running, if things get uncomfortable, you slow down and it just messes your time up. But with walking, when you start to get uncomfortable, the thing that you do to get relief actually makes you faster.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say a lot of times it's not intentional.
Yeah.
I'm sure sometimes it is, but it's an interesting scenario, which is, I guess, what makes it kind of hard to judge or to police.
Yeah, I don't think I could police
but
it.
I did, you talked about you find it hard no matter how fast someone walks, they could be going faster if they ran. But I want to push back on that a little bit. Do you think that person who walked 18:05, do you think that same person could run 18:05?
I would think so, yes.
You do?
Yes.
See, I wonder if that's the case, because they have trained their body to do something very specific.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if they switch to running, if they would actually slow down at that level.
Yeah, I don't know.
For the average person, I would think you're absolutely right. But I just wonder at that elite level.
I don't know. I would think for sure they can run faster than that. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't break into a run occasionally when they're trying to walk.
Yeah.
If it weren't easier. I don't know. That's an interesting question, though. And there are some people
I'm not thinking muscular or anything neuro. I'm thinking from a cardio standpoint. I think, a a very fast walk and a run are very different cardiovascular wise.
Yeah,
I don't know if I would say it's the same systems, but I think you're using it differently. I don't know. It's just interesting.
It is an interesting thought, though. We know people who, are on the slower end, slower runners who
walk faster.
who literally can walk faster and they can run.
Yeah,
so.
that's a real thing. But I just wonder at this level if that is
I don't know.
the same.
I would be interested. I need to research that. That's an interesting thought. We need to check into it.
As a Christian runner, you might find it hard to decide what to listen to while you run. If you are looking for positive and Christian music that will help you keep your pace, check out the Radioactive station on the new J Radio. We'll take care of picking the music so that you can concentrate on your run. Plus, you can count on us to make sure that the music is uplifting and encouraging. Check out jradio.com or download the app in your app store.
We're back, and we still need you to share your stories. We're gonna share a really great story today, but we still need to hear other stories. So everybody out there has a story, so we need to hear yours. And again, it's simple. Runforgod.com. Go in there and. We ask you, you say share your story, and then we ask you questions to fill in some scripture references and questions. It's really simple. So, but you got to write it, and that's not necessarily easy. A lot of people don't enjoy writing, but let me tell you this: if you write your story, and you're not a great writer, and you miss some, quotation, I don't know, whatever, some punctuation and things like. Don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about any of that. We'll get it to the point where it'll sound really good on when we read it.
At least to us, it'll sound really good.
Yeah. Well, because we're not professionals either, but yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, the high schools are beginning the track season, right?
Oh my gosh, Dean!
You're headed out there today.
I was just looking at it this morning. Track meet is an hour and 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
Landon runs at 4:30 for the mile.
Yeah.
Or the 2 mile. And then he runs the mile at 6:50. And then it's an hour. So we're basically, and I told Landon last night, I said, don't take this personally. This is just me having a problem with the system. I said, we're going to basically be gone for 6 hours.
Yeah.
For 15 minutes of running.
It's true.
Now, I will do that because it's my son and I will go anywhere to watch him run. But I'm convinced, and this is a dual meet.
Yeah. Oh, is it a dual meet?
It's a dual meet. We could get this meet done. You and I have no doubt we could get this meet over in 2 hours.
Yeah.
The whole thing, start to finish.
Yeah.
Field events all the way through the 4x4.
100%.
But I don't know. You will hear me complaining for the next 6-7 weeks about watching paint dry.
Well, at least the days are getting warmer. It's going to be nice out there. It might be a little warm out there for
it's be 81 degrees this afternoon. Wow. 81, and it's still February.
That's
Dean.
Crazy. Oh my goodness. That's so that everything can bloom and get green, and so we can kill it all.
Like it's happening at my house. Yeah. Everything's blooming.
But the good thing is as the days get warmer, the days get longer as well, and so it's a little bit easier to get in your runs and things when that happens. So that's cool. I've noticed that the older that I get, the harder time I have with the extreme weather, both extreme heat and extreme cold. I used to never care, but I think I'm becoming normal now. I think I was abnormal in the past. I think my body really weathered extreme weather really easily. And now it's getting to the point where it doesn't do it as well. And so I'm becoming normal to some degree. I got a friend of mine who struggles so mightily in the heat. Like in let's say a 10K. I mean, his 10K time may be different by 2 minutes based on a hot day versus a cold day. It's very, very interesting. I've never been that extreme. Have you ever run in some super, super hot weather?
Yeah, I mean, the time that sticks out in my head, I had this crazy idea of, this is back when I used to get into the weeds on water consumption and sweat loss and, physiologic. I used to love to get down into And one day I wanted to find out what is it called? Is it your sweat rate or where you figure up how much weight you lose while running?
Yeah.
And so I had this ingenious idea that it was about 103 degrees one afternoon. I mean, it was one of those scorcher, bad, dangerous. You shouldn't be out running. Yeah. And I thought, I'm going to go out and run 6 miles and see how much weight I lose. To see how much, because I was thinking about water, and I think I was training for an Ironman at the time, and you get geeked out. And so I left here. It was like 4 PM, middle of the summer. It was over 100 degrees. I remember that. And I was going to run to Varnell School and back, which is 6 miles. And I didn't have a shirt on. And I got to Varnell, Lindsey Metcalf's house. Yeah. Who used to be the mayor of Varnell before he passed away. And at the time, I didn't know Lindsey. But, I mean, I got there and I realized I was in trouble. There was no making it back. And so I'll never forget, I went up to Lindsey's door and I knocked on it. And he come to the door, and here's this guy that he's never met, no shirt, completely dripping with sweat. I mean, I probably looked like I was about to die because I probably was. Anyway, good Southern hospitality, invited me in his house, gave me something to drink. The reason I went to his house was so I could call Holly to come and get me. Yeah. And, but yeah, in 3 miles, I lost 4 pounds. Wow. 3 miles, I lost 4 pounds.
My goodness.
But I don't recommend that. That was...
When the heat and humidity get so high that it's almost like you can sweat, but there's no relief from it. Mm-mm. And you feel like you're suffocating, and it makes it really tough. And I've run in those conditions, and I don't know how many times I've run in over 100 degree weather. I've had some situations too where I've had some mighty struggles and some crazy things that have happened in some of those too. But And have you run in super cold weather?
Yeah, I have. Probably nothing to that extreme.
Yeah. I ran, according to the people that were telling me, they said we were in Boys Town, Nebraska, and we were running a Junior Olympics national championship race, 18 inches of snow on the ground. It was like -6 degrees was the actual temperature, and they said the wind chill was -60.
Yeah, never done that.
And we were
not even close.
Can you imagine them running a race these days in weather like that? There's no way they would run it. They wouldn't do it. No. Yeah, but back then it was like, race is on. It's on the schedule.
I got so tickled the other day. We were down at the track. If you've listened to this podcast very long, you know that we talk about this kind of thing. But we got to the track, and the distance runners were there, and you were there, and I said, "Where's the track team?" And you said, "Oh, it might rain."
And you started laughing.
Yeah. Because, I look over and the tennis team is practicing with the track team. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah. Well, let's share this week's story. It is it even has a great title. Mm-hmm. It comes from Jerri Seigler, and it's called Then God Sent Bubba. You're going to do what? Those were my husband's words when I told him that God had called me to join the Run for God Couch to Marathon group. What about your severe foot pain and your back issues? You're not a runner. I said, I believe God wants me to do this. He knows my issues in detail. So, like Forrest Gump, I ran 60 seconds, 20 minutes, 2 miles, 5K, and 10K. I never missed a workout. To my surprise, I was going strong. At the end of August, I developed a pain in my upper left hamstring just under the glute. It didn't feel great, but after 1 or 2 miles, the pain was tolerable. I was still running strong, gaining speed, and hitting my mileage goals. When I ran my first half marathon in October, I nailed it. Even though I experienced pain all the way, I finished second in my age group, which is 60 plus. I felt the presence of a loving God who knew I would hurt. By Thanksgiving, runs were getting longer, training was becoming more difficult, and I developed sciatica on my right side. The relentless pain prevented sleep. I was up all hours of the night, roaming the house, seeking relief. My condition worsened, causing me to run slower with each passing week. My family and prayer warriors prayed fervently against what I believed was an attack by Satan. Massage, physical therapy, and the chiropractor cost me a small fortune. The pain on my left side was relentless. During my first 16-mile training run, I cried out to God with each step to ease the pain. Take it away. At the end of the run, I was sobbing and felt deflated. I decided to scale back on my long runs, breaking them into 2 days of back-to-back miles. That change, prayer, and PT helped my sciatica to the point where I could at least sleep again. Seeing my struggle, my friends and family were deeply concerned. They encouraged me to wait until the following year so I had more time to heal and train. But I believed in a God who foreknew my pain and still called me to run in January. Finally, the Big Beach Marathon banner hung above me as I stood with the pack of runners. My husband encouraged me with a smile. I smiled back, not knowing what my time would be, but praying I wouldn't finish last. For the first 8 miles, I stuck to my plan of running 2 miles and walking a quarter. But the pain became too intense and forced me to walk for another 8. I felt defeated. I searched for God. I needed divine intervention. And then God sent Bubba. Bubba was a sweeper. I knew what it meant to see a sweeper come up beside you. He said, if you want to finish on time, you have to pick up your pace. I walked faster, but that didn't satisfy him. That's still not enough. I realized I released a groan and started running, which wasn't much faster than my walk. On several occasions, Bubba ran ahead and brought back water and Gatorade from the stations. You can't stop, he said. Drink while you run. I'm certain more liquid missed my mouth than made it inside. About 3 miles from the finish line, my right calf cramped. I took 3 steps and hit the ground hard. Bubba immediately massaged my calf and flexed my foot. He helped me up and ran ahead to return with a pack of mustard. The pain was excruciating as I wobbled into the home stretch. Bubba held my arm when I needed it and encouraged me to keep going. He told me that stopping wouldn't make the pain go away. Neither will running, I thought to myself. I could barely lift my feet as I ran past the people cheering from the deck. Don't wave. Don't even look at them, Bubba says. Just run. Just keep running. Suddenly, Mitchell was beside me also. He saw the tremendous struggle and pain written on my face. He reminded me that God has a lesson through all of this. So, with Mitchell holding my hand and Bubba holding my arm, I finally see the banner. My husband joined me, took my hand, and guided me over the finish line. I collapsed in his arms as he told me how proud he was of me. When God leads us into service or obedience through life, He never promises to do everything for us or take away all of our struggles and pain. What He does promise is that through everything we face in life, He will be beside us all the way. He encourages, He strengthens, He upholds, and He loves. For whatever reason, God wanted me to train for a year and run this marathon. I believed I had to be faithful to His prompting and be obedient to His calling. As it turns out, I was the last person across the finish line within the time limit, with 8 seconds to spare. God didn't answer my plea to not finish last, but He showed me and taught me something much deeper in a way I hadn't expected. Because at the end of the Big Beach Marathon, God showed up to run beside me to strengthen, encourage, and uphold me through a man named Bubba.
That's an awesome story.
Well, we have a follow-up to that, too. So Jerri decided she was so thankful for Bubba that she contacted the people, the race organizers, and they sent her Bubba's number. And so this is the email she sent to Bubba. Bubba, I'm calling you that because you told me that was your name. Thank you for all you did for me during the Big Beach Marathon. I have a feeling that you went beyond the scope of your sweeper role to help me finish that race. I honestly know that I would not have finished without your help and encouragement. I want you to know how much your act of compassionate kindness meant to me. I have attached a copy of a story I submitted to the Run for God ministry. Dean, Run for God coach, and Mitchell, the man that ran with us the last 2 miles and ministry founder, will be sharing my story on an upcoming podcast. I have had the privilege to tell many people about you. Each time I share, not only am I touched again by what you did, but they are too. Often, there are tears from us all. Thank you again. Know that you have impacted not only my life, but others as well. And thank you for allowing me to contact you. May God continue to use you for His glory. And then his follow-up to her. Wow, this is really cool. I'm also happy to know that you're still alive. Here's a little secret. I prayed at the start that God would use me to help someone's dream of completing a marathon come true. I love the randomness of 2 people asking God for the same complimentary prayers at the same event. When I came across you at mile 17, and I distinctly remember when I met you, I knew you and I had a destiny to fulfill by the end of the day. I had already removed 6 people from the course, but when I met you, I knew you were going to finish. I never had a doubt. I didn't tell you this because I didn't want to distract you, but 2 weeks earlier, I qualified for the Boston Marathon. At mile 18, I started throwing up and couldn't eat gels. I started cramping and hurting everywhere. 2 miles out, my toes and my right foot cramped, and I knew I couldn't stop, so I had to run through the pain. Afterwards, I rolled around on the ground for 30 minutes in the worst pain in my life. I kept telling you I knew your pain, and I kept telling you it was going to hurt whether you finished or not because I knew where you were. I was never worried for your health. If I thought you were going to hurt yourself, I would have told you to quit. What you felt was normal. It was your mind that had quit. Like I said, I never had a doubt in you finishing, and I was so happy to see you cross that finish line. I couldn't sleep for 2 to 3 days just thinking about it and being grateful I could help. Now, you didn't really finish last. I removed 6 people. They still haven't finished. And technically, you beat me. So you accomplished all your goals. One question. You didn't seem to care if you finished. Like it was something that you didn't really care about one way or another. So my question for you is, are you glad to have finished? Unbelievable, right? I mean, that's hard to read. I mean, Bubba is just the idea that he prayed for that before it happened. And for her to have gone through all she went through, and for God to have put all of that together is just as incredible a story as I've heard.
If you're out there listening, I'm sitting here thinking myself, and you ever wonder what this ministry is about, that's it.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. That's why we do what we do.
Amen.
And the fact that we get a front row seat to that back and forth between her and Bubba, I sit here and I pinch myself.
Yeah.
Thinking, how did we get to be part of this? Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah, that blows me away.
And a lot of people will look at this and they'll go, most people would have quit for sure. And she didn't. Through all of this, she didn't quit. And you wonder, I was watching The Chosen here recently, and one of the things that really struck Debbie and I as we were watching it was when Jesus said, "Are you ready to do hard things?" Mm-hmm. And this is why you do hard things. Mm-hmm. This story is incredible, and it's only incredible because she did the hard things, and she did something that most people would never even think to do. And in the end, God has been glorified in this story mm-hmm. because she ran through sleepless nights. I mean, she did stuff that normal people don't do. And that's what God calls us to do, is extraordinary things.
Yeah, and I mean, you gosh, this is so, I mean, and they're on my calendar. You know, I tell you that everybody knows where I post my workouts. They're on my mirror so that I look at them every day. I'm just going to say what I wrote on Tuesday's workout, because I put an X. I'm just one of these visual calendar people. I wrote "you pansy" on Tuesday. You can go in there and look at it right now, because there was no excuse that I didn't finish that workout. I learned something, but I was beside Jerri. There was a time where we were literally holding her up.
Yeah.
And she's inspiring me through this story.
Yeah.
And that's what is so cool is, you know, we tell people, teach a class, you're going to learn far more than the students. And this is just another example of what excuse do I have? I have no excuse. And Jerri, just know that the next time my workout gets hard, which may be 2 hours from now, I'm going to have your face in my head. Mm-hmm. And that's what this club is all about, because we're doing hard things. Yeah, I remember Jesus saying that in The Chosen, are you ready to do hard things? That's what I tell my kids, is do hard things, because the more we do it, yes, we may fail at times, but the more you do it, by the time you get sometime down the road, that thing that was hard 3 months ago is now easy. Yep. And that's where growth comes from. And man, Jerri gets it. And kudos to her and to Bubba. I mean, I got to talk to when Bubba told me his name, I was like, are you being serious? I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
You know, Bubba was out there on the course with her. I think he was kind of skeptical of me at first, because he didn't know who I was.
Right.
I was just somebody coming up. I ran back out to run in with Jerri. But to hear that he prayed before the race, I mean, we can't make this stuff up.
No.
I don't know, I'm rambling, but it's just it's incredible.
God has a story like this for all of us, if we'll. Now, everybody's story is different. So, like, I ran this same race, right? And my story, you know, is a lot different than Jerri's story. But there's a story in my race too. There's a story in everybody from Run for God who went and ran that race that day. There's a God story in every one of them.
Sure.
And but you have to be willing to get out there and do it and do something hard. And
do hard things.
Do hard things. Hebrews 13:5. I will never leave you or forsake you. And she follows that with, the Lord himself goes before me and is with me. He called me to do a hard thing. He did not call me and then sit back and watch me figure it out on my own. He provided help, encouragement, strength, stamina, mentors, steadfast support of family, and in the end, a stranger named Bubba. And that's just again, can't make it up.
No.
Can't make it up. It's so important that when God sends us, God, you know, she was convinced that God had told her, I want you to do this Couch the Marathon thing. She knew how difficult it was going to be. She knew it was going to be crazy, crazy hard. And she faced it and said, okay, God, if you say so, I'll do it. And she did it. She's Peter getting out of the boat. I mean, she's doing something that is just, people just don't do. And again, in the end, this huge story. But God sent her somebody. She mentioned several things, and I'm sure there were many others she didn't share in here. And in the end, she needed that one last person to get her across that finish line, and it was Bubba. Mm-hmm. And little did she know he had prayed to have that exact opportunity.
It makes me want to go volunteer to be a sweeper.
Yeah.
In a race, because We've said it before. It's why we keep our finish line roaring until the very last person, because you're right. The people up front have a story. But the stories that really make an impact are those back there who everybody would understand if they mailed it in, but they didn't. And man, it just...
Yeah.
This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, for sure. I think about, this kind of came to my mind, is that God, when God gives us something to do, he does push us out, and he wants us to do it. He wants us to take those steps of faith in front of him, but he's there in case it falters. I remember the first time my oldest son, I went and dropped him off at school after he'd been at school for like a week. He's only a week into his first schooling he'd ever been to. And I remember I went and dropped him off, and I went to the classroom with him. And I remember watching him. He walks in the classroom, and it's like he owns the place. He walks in, he starts taking these chairs. He's the first one there. He starts taking the chairs off of the desk. It's obviously something that they do every day. And he was being helpful, and he was kind of taking charge of what was going on. And I remember looking at him and thinking, I was so proud of him. For getting out there and getting involved. But he knows he's got the teacher to help him with a lot of those things. But he also has mom and dad a phone call away, right down the road, who can come and be there for him anytime we need him. And I think that's the way God is. God loves to watch us do that stuff, like taking those chairs off those desks. But he wants to watch us do it. He doesn't want to do it for us. He wants us to do it. He wants us to take those steps and do those things. But he's there when we need him. Yeah,
we talk about so many times how our relationship with God is like our relationship with our boys.
Yeah.
You got boys, I got boys. And the way I describe it to Lane and Landon, and I've had this conversation more with Lane lately, because he's 20 years old now. He's at college, and he's still living here, but we've kind of pulled back. And I explain it in that, in our house, until you're 18, I've kind of got a leash, and I'm guiding with a little bit more forceful hand, because I'm the parent, you're the child, you're my responsibility, and it's my responsibility to teach you, for lack of better terms, how to drive the car. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the car with you, and I'm showing you this and showing you that. But with Lane, he's kind of moved on to that stage of, I'm now the guardrails. Yeah. Not in the car anymore. I'm there to hopefully help you not hit the ditch.
Yeah.
But I'm going to let you swerve. Mm-hmm. I'm going to let you bump into that person. All I have is the guardrails up right now, and I know there's coming a time where the guardrails are gone. And I think that's how our progression in our walk with Christ is the same way. The only difference with God is I don't think the guardrails are ever gone.
Yeah.
He's always going to. Now, can we jump the guardrail? Yeah. And he'll allow that. Yeah. But he's always there. He gives us a destination to go, and he's always got those guardrails up, helping us, not doing it for us. Yeah. And I think that's where some people get frustrated, is they want God to do these things, or they want God to take away the speed checks or the speed bumps or whatever, analogy you want to throw out there, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's just guardrails.
Yeah.
And I don't know, this story really just kind of has me speechless.
2 Corinthians 9:8. God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all you need, you will abound in every good work. She says, you just heard my story. You know I was in pain, but God provided in every step of the journey. It started with a 60-second run and continued across the big beach finish line. I ran to glorify God. My walk with God deepened as I relied on Him to carry me through the difficult days of training. I was able to share my journey with a fantastic group of ladies who prayed faithfully. They, in turn, shared with others. God provided the courage to start the journey, and He provided for every need as I finished the journey. His grace overwhelms. I noticed that it says God is able to bless you abundantly, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to. And if you read the verses after this one, you see a picture of how God He gives us according to our attitude towards Him. God loves a cheerful giver. He wants to bless us. Not only can He and is able to, but He wants to, but He also wants us to do what Jerri did. He wants us to take those steps along that journey that He has planned out for us. And he doesn't do it again because He has to. Jerri she didn't have to do what she did. She could have hung it up at any moment. I mean, honestly, I'm thinking literally 99 out of 100 people would have quit when she was up at night because she couldn't sleep with that sciatica. I mean, 99 out of 100, no question about it. But she was that faithful. And I believe in her story, and why this story is so fantastic and so unbelievable, and why God sent a man like Bubba to finish this story off, is because of her. It's in proportion to her faith. The story is incredible because her faith was absolutely incredible.
She makes me think of James 1. I just flipped to James 1 too. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Her journey is a picture of James 1:2. And we think that God gives us these trials. We think that He gives us these trials kind of on spiritual terms, like spiritual trials. But I'm convinced God gives us all kind of signing up for a marathon. She said it, and I take her at what she said. God told her to do this. Well, we don't think about, does God really call us to run a marathon? If He thinks we're going to learn something through it, absolutely, He will. And man, it's just, again, it's hard to put into words what I'm thinking about this right now, but there's so many things to be learned from Jerri's story that I'm learning right now. Yeah. One of the things that I learned in looking at this story and reading through it again, and do you notice in here that she doesn't say anywhere in this story that she wanted to quit? She doesn't mention that, but she did. Oh yeah.
And we know that, and she talked about that, but she doesn't mention that in the story. And I think that's because she was so single-minded, focused on, I want to do this thing. And when it did get to the point where she was ready to hang it up, God sent somebody to remind her why she did it, why she started it to start with. And that's all she needed, because she had steeled her mind to the fact that I'm going to cross that finish line because God told me I could. And she did everything she could, and then God helped her with the rest. And she says in the end, her relationship was deepened through all of this. As hard as it was, I'm sure she's like, it's totally worth all that pain to have that better relationship with Christ. Acts 17:28. In Him we live and move and have our being. She says, our Lord not only holds us together physically, but also spiritually. He has the power to propel those He calls to cross the finish line, rejoicing in victory. Paul here is preaching to unbelievers, right? He's explaining that all we are is given to us by God, and therefore we should honor Him with all He has given us. And that's why I point out that's why I run. My biggest reason for running is I feel like God gave me that as a gift, and that if I don't use it, then I'm squandering something that God gave me. And so I feel obligated to do it to glorify him for that reason, because he gave it to me. And you know, she mentions God can propel us to whatever he wants. And I think that God has a victory in store for all of us if we'll just give it all to him. And that's what she did here. She said she went all in. I mean, she pushed every chip she had in the middle of that table and went in. It was what an incredible story. Question: why did God call me to run? And she says, I don't know why. I have not fallen in love with running, even after a year. I know that God called me to run. I may never know why this side of heaven. Maybe it was to test my obedience, in which case I passed that test. Isn't that interesting? Because a lot of times you get people who, you know, on the other end, they're like, yeah, I've grown to love running. And she's like, you know, she's not had that thought that she loves running, and I guess she's not going to run anymore. Maybe she won't.
That's what I'm sitting here wondering.
Yeah,
is she going? We're not casting aspersions either way.
Yeah. Now, I hope she'll be physically active.
Yeah,
but whatever that looks like.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's fascinating. Normally,
I'll be honest. At the end of the marathon, I had a very clear sense that she was never running another step.
Yeah.
Just from hearing her talk. But we all know how that is. You know?
Right. I'm
never doing another marathon all the way till you get the finish line. And it's, oh, look, there's a registration for another marathon. So I would love to see Jerri back. I mean, her story, I think this story is going to live on for a long time in the Run for God circles. So I would love to see you continue, Jerri. But if you don't, then follow where God's leading you.
Yeah, you know what's great about this story is if you just made up a story, you know, you just came up with some fictional story. Mm-hmm. I don't know you could do any better. You couldn't come up with something off the top of your head that was any better than this story.
Then a guy named Bubba.
Yes. Man, oh man.
I think we need to give Bubba a free entry to the Run for God 5K in April.
For sure.
Get him up here.
Yeah. So why do you think God is using somebody who even at the end says, I really don't like that thing that I was just doing? I mean, I just think that's fascinating that God will use us in ways that are so because if somebody was to write that story like I was talking about, we're gonna write a story. You're not gonna write a story that talks about somebody doing something they don't enjoy doing, right? That's where you get your passion from normally, is because I love to do that thing, but it's not where her passion came from.
But to hear so many people tried to encourage her to stop. She didn't fall in love with it, and friends and family were encouraging her to stop and finish it later. Man, there was something deep inside of Jerri that was really driving her, and that something was the Holy Spirit. I mean, she
made a promise to God.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Another question: what have I learned during this journey? She says, I learned that my plan is not God's plan. My plan would have been free of pain and full of getting faster and stronger. God brought me pain, slowed me down, and made me fully rely on him for every mile I ran. He provided help in many ways. Praying friends and family, a dear friend surprising me on a training run with a sign of encouragement, water, and even shaking pom-poms. Mentors, worship music, and in the end, God provided Bubba. How many times do we need to see God working in a non-standard situation before we understand that God is a non-standard God? That God doesn't do things the way we think that God should do things. And this is just a great example of that. You know, she talks about how her plan would have created a much easier path. Well, we would all do that, right?
We wouldn't have this story.
Right. That's exactly right. If this path were easy, this story wouldn't be anything like what it is.
I kind of have to think, Jerri may email us and say I'm wrong. I kind of think she's going to keep running. Because rest assured, the next 5K she does, it's going to be like a cakewalk.
Yes.
After what she's been through, everything else in the running arena, short of a marathon, she's going to have a completely different perspective on, because she's going to have that to fall back on. When that 5K training gets hard, she's going to look back at this story and say, oh, that's nothing. So I kind of think I'm speculating here. I kind of think she's going to keep running.
Yeah.
I hope she does.
I hope so too. I think it's interesting that I can't help but think about Job, right? And the reason we know Job's name today, you have to wonder, why did God put Job through all of that stuff, or allow all that stuff to happen to Job? And the reason was for the story.
Think about, I'm sitting here going through every character in the Bible.
Yeah.
Think about them.
Yeah.
All of them had, the reason we know them is because of the things they overcame.
Yeah.
Paul, Silas, David. I mean, it's because God allowed difficulties of many kinds into their lives, and that's where we learn to lean on God. We talk about it so much. It's strength is made doing hard things. You don't get big muscles by lifting light weight. You get big muscles by doing hard things. You don't get fast by doing easy runs. You get fast by doing those tempo runs that I despise with a passion, and I completely failed at last week. But guess what? Next week I'm going to do it again, because I can look back on that failure of a workout last week and think, Lord willing, I'll never let that happen again. Now, will it happen again? It's very likely. But I learned these lessons, and man, Jerri learned a wealth of lessons about her walk with Christ, not about running. And that's the thing that is so cool, is everything about Jerri's story has running attached to it, but it has nothing to do with running. Mm-hmm. It has everything to do with our walk with Christ.
You know, the parallels between what she went through and what Job went through just keep running through my head. And I wonder this. Job, at any point, could have given in to all his friends that came to his side and said, you need to curse God and just, it's over for you. But he never did. He kept staying strong. She did the same thing. Mm-hmm. She had people telling her to quit. She kept going. I wonder how many times people have yielded to their friends' advice and missed out on a story like this one. You know it's happened. We wouldn't know who Job was. We wouldn't know anything about Job's story today if he would have just given up, right? We wouldn't know anything about Jerri's story if she'd have just given up. She wouldn't have told us what was going on and how we wouldn't know it. But we know it, and it's grand, and it's fabulous, and it's going to help so many people because she was willing to get to the end of the story.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking, did you ever read Lane's white paper?
I didn't.
He said in there something that really is coming back to me right now, and it parallels exactly with what Jerri says here, or what Jerri went through here. He talked about, Lane he's a professional triathlete at this point, and he's at that stage where it's very hard. Not only the training, he's been dealing with the training for his whole life, but he talks in that white paper about how he doesn't understand why so many people give up on their dream because everybody says it's time to move on. And this is really resonating with me right now. He said, Lane is kind of at that point right now in college. It's time to start thinking about career. And he's getting the sense from everybody. He doesn't get it from me or his mom, but it's time to move on. But Lane has this deep down conviction that this is what God has him doing right now.
Yeah.
And he's even said, if God tells me to lay it down, I'll lay it down tomorrow. But right now, this is what God has me doing. Lane, in some way in his mind, he sees something that God's going to do with this. I can't necessarily see it. No, really, nobody can see it because it's what God's put. I couldn't see it with Jerri.
Yeah.
But Jerri knew deep down and I'm not going to succumb to what others are saying. I'm not going to succumb because it's hard. And Lane is so right. What he said that he is sensing and that he sees others do. You're in college, it's time to move on. And you see so many people leave the sport. But Lane's sticking with it, and something inside of him is doing that. And I think it's the same exact thing that held Jerri to it.
Yeah.
I mean, Lane has had a crummy couple years.
Yeah.
Jerri had her early on training, just like Lane's, was great, and then she hit that rough patch, but guess what? She pushed through it, and we have a story to tell as a result of it now. And so, that's...
You have to wonder what the end of Lane's
society will say, move on.
Yeah.
Society was telling Jerri, move on. This ain't for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a deep conviction of the Holy Spirit that we don't need to let go of.
Yeah.
We were kind of at that point in May of 2020 around here.
Yeah.
COVID's shutting us down. We need to close the doors and go home. But we got around the table and we said, God's not done with this yet.
Yeah.
Everything is telling us, everything externally is saying, you're done. But we serve a bigger God than that.
Yes, we do.
Yes,
we do. Which brings me to my final question, she says. How can I be a Bubba to others? She follows by saying, I don't know if what Bubba did for me is typical for a sweeper during a race.
I don't think it was.
No. He could have told me I wasn't going to make it to the finish line within the time limit, called a car, and sent me on my way without a second thought. Instead, he invested in my success. He ensured my success. My hope is that I can show the same compassion and patience to others I encounter. Definitely not the norm. That is for sure not the norm. And this is the big question, is what can we do to be a Bubba for others? What can we do to help other people? I think we're all called in some way to help others across the finish line. And that finish line isn't a running finish line necessarily. It might be for me, but for other people, it's getting them to the end of a project at work. It's getting them over a tragic thing that happened in their life with the loss of a loved one or a divorce or a fire in a house, or it could be anything of helping somebody get to the end of a hard thing. I believe we're all called to do that in some way, and we just have to find it. And in this case, what's interesting about this one is that Bubba prayed very specifically for this to happen, and it happened. God answered his prayer, and that is so awesome to see.
But what is gosh, we can go on and on with this story. What has this story, how is it going to change Bubba's life?
Oh, yeah.
And the ripple effect there is so many ripples going out from this one story that we'll never know where these ripples stop. That's on right. This side of glory.
That's right.
One day we will.
That's right.
And it'll be awesome to see. But, and so if you're, kind of as we wrap up Jerri's story, we've got a lot of people out there right now that are 6, 7, 8 weeks into the marathon challenge. Read this story. Keep this story close by, either on your playlist or whatever. And when things get tough, go back and listen to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It is. Do you struggle with motivation to exercise? Are you looking for something that will challenge you and inspire and motivate you? The Run for God Run Club is just what you need to get off the couch and on your way to a fitter, healthier you. Stop trying to get into better shape and do it with the help and inspiration of thousands of others who are going through the same challenges you face. Whether you're participating in the Couch to Marathon Challenge or just looking for a daily pick-me-up to get active, join the Run for God Run Club today. You can join for as little as 27 cents a day. So what are you waiting for? Get started today at www.runforgod.com. All right, we're back. So what is your go-to thing to get you motivated whenever you're struggling?
Reading Jerry's story.
Reading Jerry's story.
I mean, yeah, it is. It's
what do you do daily? Like you're having a hard time getting out the door to run. You're like, I just don't feel like doing it today. What do you have a go-to thing that seems to help get you going?
I think I try to set myself up the day before, just like with that tempo run. I knew that tempo was going to be hard, and I still failed at it. But what I did that day, if you'll notice, I asked you to be there, which was one form of accountability, and then I did it knowing that when it was going to get hard, the high school team was going to be showing up.
Yeah,
and sometimes even that isn't enough. But I always try to do things. It's kind of like the running the out and backs. You know, if you're going to struggle with an 8-mile run out 4. And so I always try to do things like that. It may seem a little gimmicky, but
it helps.
You need to do things that will set you up for success when success is there to be had.
Yeah.
Because we can talk ourselves out of anything.
Yeah.
But And with you there and with the high school team sitting there watching me go down in the blaze of glory, I still went down. But that's what I do. I try to. That's
a good way to put it. I just like the idea of checking things off. I said I would do it, so I do it.
I have it on my mirror.
Yeah, and it's a
physical check.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. The other thing too, and this applies to all of us, is that we know that it's good for us. So I think that ought to be a pretty good motivator. I mean, I know that should be a motivator too for us for our diet and other things as well, to keep us on track for where we want to be. I've been sick now for a few weeks. Nothing terrible, but I've got this cough and it just won't go away. And it's probably been 3 weeks. I've never had a cough for a week in my whole life, and all of a sudden I've got this cough. It's hanging on, and I don't know what's going on. I'm about tired of it, but I'm getting out there and running every day. It's hard because it's a little bit in my respiratory system and I can feel it, and it's harder running than normal, but I'm still getting out there. I'm still getting it done because that's what I do. And I'll be glad that I did when we get to the other side of it and I feel better. So, the other thing too that I think is a good motivator sometimes, for some people especially, some people struggle to find their quiet time. Well, think about running as your quiet time, or you don't want that to be exclusively your quiet time, but think about it as a supplement to it, because it really can be very good quiet time. I remember I ran in the day when there was no stuff to listen to, and I mean, it's all it was. Running was going out and running. You didn't even have a GPS watch to tell you how far you went, and in some ways, it was better then.
See, I still don't listen to anything.
Yeah. There's a million things out there that you can do. But
see, I found it easier to do that. I could do that when I was walking, but for whatever reason with running, I just can't. Yeah. I don't know why that is. If I'm walking, I was listening to books and podcasts and everything, but with running, somehow it's different. I don't know if I can't focus as good. Yeah. And I want to focus on what I'm listening to, but yeah.
Lots of options out there. So it is time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. You guys have a dog and a cat. Of course, so do we. And I'm going to talk about them today. This one is called Charley the Cat. 2/3 of all U.S. households own pets. The most plentiful pet is the aquarium fish, with 139 million of them nationwide. We have a couple of those with two enormous fish that are about 15 years old and well over 20 years old, respectively. We also have a dog named Flojo. Of all the homes that have pets, 75% of them own dogs. Of course, ours is the best. But I want to talk about the next most popular pet. A little over half the homes with pets have cats. Ours is named Charley. Charley is 12 years old and is set in her ways, as you can imagine. And there's one thing she loves to do that gives me a chance to practice something I don't always like to do. Every night, she will rest right next to the place I usually sit on the couch. She waits for me to sit down. As soon as I do, it will take no longer than 3 seconds for her to be in my lap. She gets her lap time almost every night. If I'm not home, she will sit and look at my spot on the couch, seemingly waiting for me to come home and sit down. She loves her lap time. Sometimes I'm not a fan of lap time. I have things to do, and I don't really want to sit still for 10 minutes while she purrs in my lap and I get nothing done. At least that's what's going through my head. But here's the thing. I am getting something done. Charley looks forward to that time all day long. It would seem that it is her second favorite time of the day, right after snack time. Even though it doesn't feel like I'm accomplishing something, I really am. I have to do the same thing with my running. There are two different ways I have to adjust and realize that even when it feels like I'm not doing any good, I really am. First, there are days when I don't feel like running. I'm tired and worn out, and running is one of the last things I want in the moment. But I go run anyway. As hard as it can be, I never regret it. It may feel like I'm not doing myself any good, but I am. Second, sometimes my body is telling me I need to slow down. I have a certain pace range I like to run when I take to the road. But there are days when that pace feels way too fast, way too taxing on my body. All I have to do is slow down, but that's easier said than done. We can become slaves to the watch, and as soon as we notice our pace is 10 seconds slower than normal, our body wants to speed up. So, I turn my watch off. If I don't know how fast I'm running, I won't be enticed to try to run faster. It provides just the rest my body needs. It may feel like I'm not doing myself any good, but I am. Listening to your body is important, but you can take it too far. I don't need a day off. I just need to take it really easy for a day or two, and everything will be fine. Please realize that I'm not suggesting everyone should run every day. I am definitely not saying that. I have built up many years of miles that has tempered my body to feel like it is normal. I know my limits, but sometimes my body is trying to force my brain to think I should do less. Why? Because my brain is trying to protect me, and that's a good thing. But many people give in to the temptation to take an extra day off way too easily. If that's you, ask yourself, is your brain just trying to guide you down the easy road? By the same token, there are people on the other end of the spectrum. If it's on the schedule, it must be done. And that's not true either. I guess what I'm saying is that it's important to take a step back and reason with yourself. Do you really need to modify what you're doing? Or are you just taking the easier road? It is not always black and white. There will be days when it's a tough decision. When it is hard to decide, I like to fall on the side of doing something. Even if it's not what I planned to do. I can remember many times when I didn't feel like running, but I laced my shoes up anyway and found that I felt way better than I thought I would. Maybe the best way to look at it is this. If you don't have an injury, go do it. If you're just tired, go do it. While it's important to listen to your body, you have to interpret what it is telling you before you heed its advice. It is also important to spend time with God every day. Sure, there'll be days when it seems like you don't have time, but that's just the evil one trying to convince you it is not important. There may be times when my run doesn't feel like it does me any good. Likewise, there are times when your prayers and Bible study will feel forced and it doesn't yield results. But do it anyway. Because the truth is that it is good for you even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. We could talk about all the reasons why, but you know them. Don't let your brain and Satan talk you into complacency. You'll regret it if you do. Charley the cat makes me slow down and realize that sometimes I need to do the things I don't feel like doing. In her case, it's good for her. But in the case of my running, I know following through is good for me. And in the case of my one-on-one time with God, I'm convinced that it is always the right thing to do to make time for God. His time should be the priority. And even on those days when it feels forced, God is working on us and loves to see our faithfulness. And I just know my Heavenly Father is going to reward me.
It's a great story, Dean. Learn a lot from our pets, can't we?
Yeah, we can. Yeah. That's, I thought about it. It wasn't too long ago. I get really frustrated with her when she gets down in my lap and I'm like, I got something I need to be doing. And sometimes I have to force her out because I really, really have to get something done. But then I got to thinking something that you say all the time. You got to find a time to do nothing.
Yeah. And
in that time to do nothing, for me, she's getting something that she just cherishes, right? I'm frustrated by it. And then on the other end of that, and this goes to humans as well. Sometimes we get frustrated with somebody who's in our life when that person is really looking forward to that time. And so being a little more patient with it, I think, is good for all of us, right?
Patience and compassion.
Yeah. But yeah, we've got to find time with God, to find time to have time with God. You know, I see people who, they always find a way to make it to work. Doesn't matter how sick they are, they always go to work. I was that guy. It doesn't matter. I'm going. And then some of those people, those same people who are so focused on getting to work no matter what, don't go to church on the weekend when something else comes up. And I'm not throwing stones at anybody, but I am saying if you work that hard to make sure that you can go to work, you should probably do the same thing with your time with God and with going to church, because sometimes you'll find. Now, I'm not saying you should never miss church. Please don't hear me say that's not what I'm saying, because there are things that you need to do. Next weekend, I'm going to be out of town at a race that's out of town. That's where I have to be. So there are times to miss church, but you should want to be there. You should want to be there. It
should be a void when you're not there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When it comes to running, I think, some people are like that. Any excuse to miss a workout, it's too hot. It's raining. It
might rain.
It might rain. Yeah. Whatever the excuse might be, and we got to be careful not to allow ourselves to do that. We have to do what Jerri did.
Yeah.
Get it in no matter how hard it is. I mean, some of us don't get a run in because it might rain. Meanwhile, Jerri can't sleep at night and she's getting her runs in, right? I mean, what is that teaching us, right? We should figure out a way to get it done. So, when you're convinced that the run, because there are times I go out, and there are times when I probably run 10-minute pace, because I just don't feel like it. I'm so sore or whatever, and that's okay. Am I doing myself any good physically? Maybe not. I mean, based on what I normally do, that may not really do me any physical good, but it does me a lot of mental good to know I got out there and got it done anyway. So sometimes it's not just about the physical side, it's about the mental side, right? All right, every week I share a reason why running or walking is so awesome. And this is why this time. There is no off season. Every other sport has several months where there's a window of time where there is nothing going on. Now, they may be training on the side, they may be doing other things, but there's really nothing going on. But running basically goes from one season to the next and never really stops. And I think that's cool. So it's some sports you can't participate in when it's cold, for example. Some sports you can't do, but you can do running anytime. So I like there's no off season in running. Well, this weekend we had the oldest record in track and field was broken, which I think is cool. It was set in 1981 or 82. It was the indoor 400 meters for women. Femke Bol from the Netherlands broke the record. The lady who held the record for all that time was Jarmila Kradikvilova. I have a hard time saying her name. And she's got another record that's super old, too, that she set in 1983 for the outdoor 800 meters. And there's only 2 people that ever come within a minute of that record. She's run 153 outdoors. So it's really interesting. She's also one of only 2 people to ever run under 48 seconds for the 400 meters outdoors. Now, she claims there was nothing going on at the time. But if you look at a picture of Jarmila, I have some questions about how she was able to run that fast.
Well, and didn't the Czechoslovakia team as a whole got in some hot water for doping back then?
They did. And so you have to wonder if she was involved in that. Now, she maintains her innocence. Yeah. And so I'm not saying she did, she didn't. I'm just, the record is incredible how fast it is. So, yeah, it's interesting. Some people think that her record will last 100 years. I mean, that's how fast it is. So we'll have to see. But it was good to see that Bol broke one of her records. It's always good to see people getting faster. But another interesting thing that happened this weekend in the world of professional running, I know we don't share that much about professional running these days, but this one was interesting for a reason. I want to share it. At the World Cross Country Championships, which I think is the most pure event in the world. I mean, it doesn't matter the weather. This race is just all guts all the time. And the women's race was crazy. So Letesenbet Gidey of Ethiopia is running this race, and she takes the lead in this race. She pulls away from the pack with 1,200 meters to go. Well, by the time she got to about 400 meters to go, you could tell she was slowing a little bit. And the woman in second place from Kenya was gaining on her a little bit. And then over the last, there was a downhill section of about 150 meters or so, and she was coming hard, and Gidey seemed to be really struggling to get to the finish line. Well, as soon as the Kenyan girl passes Gidey at about 50 meters left in the race, she just goes down like a sack of potatoes. I mean, her legs just buckle. She goes down, and I think she was focused on the finish line, and when somebody ran by her, it startled her. Everything gave up, and boom, she just hit the ground. I mean, it was incredible to watch how her body just quit working. And her coach came out there. She wound up being disqualified because her coach came out there because she's one of the best runners in the entire world.
Yeah.
And so I bring this up for this reason. Because I think that sometimes we think that some people it's so easy for some people. This is the best, arguably the best female runner on the planet who just didn't finish a race because she collapsed before she got to the finish line. And if you're out there and you're struggling and something crazy is happening, it's not unusual. It happens. Don't freak out. I guarantee you she's going to get up and she's going to run her next race and she's going to be fine. And that's the way we should all look at it, right? Don't go crazy, and don't get too wrapped up in things that go wrong. You mentioned the beginning of the podcast about your failure to make it to a finish line. It's not the end of the world, and you'll make it to the next one. So the other thing that happened, I think, was cool in this was the American men and women both finished third in the under 20 division. The men have finished that high before, but the women have never finished that high. And so it was good to see the American young people doing well. So that's cool. All right, I'm going to leave you with a trivia question for next week. Running has an effect on the immune system. Does running increase the efficiency of the immune system or decrease it? How's that for a question? If you know the answer to that question, you can send it to dean@runforgod.com. Be the first person to answer that question, and you will win cash, basically, in the Run for God store. So be the first person to answer that, and we'll reward you with that. All right, I'm going to leave you with a motivational thought of the week. This one comes from Laird Hamilton. Says, make sure your worst enemy doesn't live between your own two ears. That's a good one, isn't it?
Where he likes to camp out sometimes.
He does. He does. If that voice in your head starts to share negative things, shut him up. Mm-hmm. If you hear negative things in your ear, know that it's not God, right?
Right.
God's going to have a positive thing to say. And so when you hear negativity, realize you've let somebody else in there besides him, mm-hmm. right? All right. What a great week. What a great story for this week.
Yeah, if you notice I got quiet during this podcast, I can't, and I'm just going to, and I'll shut up after this. If you're thinking about sharing your story, I mean, Jerri's story is one that she was the last person to officially finish that race. I mean, I know what Bubba said about the other, but she was the last person to cross the finish line in that race. She's not the fastest. But her story absolutely rung my bell, and I have no doubt that it's going to do that for many others. So if you're out there and you're thinking, I'm not the fastest runner, nobody wants to hear my story, we do want to hear your story.
Yeah.
And Jerri, thank you so much for sending this. I have to think that we're going to be throwing jokes around, be a Bubba for somebody today. Yeah. I mean, and to Bubba, if he's out there listening, which I hope he does, thank you for the encouragement that you give people. I kind of stalked him on Facebook a little bit, and he loves to sweep.
Yeah.
I think this was the 4th or 5th year that he swept the Big Beach Marathon. So it makes me want to go do that, just so you can be a part of these types of stories. And so while the front of the pack is inspiring and great and it's motivational, the cool thing about running is the back is just as inspiring, motivational, and encouraging.
That is true. Yeah, I've done some pacing of some marathons before, and I've been able to help some people to their goals as a pacer. It's when you be a Bubba, because in that case, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to be a Bubba in that case. And it's inspiring. For sure. All right. Until next week. May God bless every step of every run. Go out there and shine your light. Good job, Ben.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.